Welcome everyone to Ratioed. My name is Harrison Faulkner. Earlier this week, Legacy Media confirmed to the rest of Canada what you and I have known for many years, and that is, of course, that our Prime Minister loves to look at himself and that he is a narcissist. Then we move on to the CBC, who aired a segment on CBC television highlighting a group of black activists burning books on Emancipation Day. Were they critical of this action? Did they have any opposing voices to the book burning? No, of course not. It's the CBC. Then we move on to a group of UK climate activists who have a brilliant new strategy to save the planet. What they're doing is they are going around Canadian cities and slashing SUV tires. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, of course, wouldn't that just create more rubber? Wouldn't SUV drivers get new tires and continue to drive? No, of course. The vandalism is what matters to these UK climate activists. And we wrap up the show this week to give the Ratio of the Week award to the BC NDP. Yes, the British Columbia New Democrat Party, the governing party of British Columbia. They are very happy and very proud of their work at promoting and funding gender-affirming surgeries with your tax dollars. Now, if you're in British Columbia, you better be happy about this because your government clearly is. Now, if you like True North and you like Ratioed and you want to help us out, we really could use it. Give this video a like and share it. That's the best way we can ensure that this video is going to be seen by more people. We are not the Legacy Media. We do not get money from Justin Trudeau's slush fund, and we certainly don't get any help from YouTube and the rest of the big tech social media companies. So if you like us and you want to help us, give this video a like and a share. All right, let's get into it. So did you guys happen to see that hilarious Canadian Press article from earlier this week? It wasn't much of a surprise to me, as I'm sure it wasn't that much of a surprise to you. It was more just of a confirmation of what I had already known about our Prime Minister, that of course he is a narcissist, that of course he loves to look at himself. Well, it turns out that world leaders have cracked the Prime Minister's code. They know the way to Justin Trudeau's heart, and they are gifting him several times apparently. They gift him pictures of himself. You just can't make it up. It's straight out of course, a Babylon Bee article. It's brilliant, but it's true. This is written in a Canadian Press article, which means, of course, it was publicized across the Legacy Media. All the Trudeau slush fund recipients ran the story, which admittedly doesn't make the Prime Minister look very good. Bit of a surprise to see stories like this appearing in the Toronto Star and CTV News, but nonetheless, this was the headline on CTV News. Prime Minister Trudeau is routinely offered portraits of himself as gifts. Amazing. And the Toronto Star ran with the headline, "Records show Trudeau is routinely offered portraits of himself as gifts." So the story hilariously starts with this paragraph. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been offered the gift of his own likeness some 17 times since becoming Prime Minister, including once by the President of China. Yes, the Chinese dictator Xi Jinping, of course. And then it goes on to say, the portraits, along with a myriad of vases and wine bottles and Star Wars paraphernalia, because of course our Prime Minister not only is a narcissist who loves to look at himself, he's also a Star Wars nerd. How befitting of a world leader. Not to disparage any of you Star Wars nerds, I wouldn't want to be in the same company as Trudeau myself. So the story does go on to then say that he does have to forfeit some of the gifts he's given, including 3 of those portraits. So Trudeau only has 14 of the 17 portraits he's been given by world leaders. What could he possibly, how could he possibly survive with only 14 portraits of himself? I'm starting to feel bad for the guy, quite honestly. So for those of you that don't know, apparently handing out gifts between world leaders is a common thing. It's done at almost all diplomatic stops for world leaders. So as you can imagine, when Xi Jinping gives Justin Trudeau a portrait of himself, maybe Justin Trudeau hands over some Cuban cigars or something else from his personal heritage. So believe it or not, the Legacy Media that reported this story about Justin Trudeau receiving gifts of himself from world leaders, they actually did some digging. They actually did some actual reporting on this, and they found some interesting things that might give us some insight into Justin Trudeau's character. So of course we know he loves to look at himself. He loves pictures of himself. But Trudeau kept certain gifts. Apparently there's a rule that if the gift is over $1,000 in value, he has to forfeit the gift or give it back to Canada. Or if he wants to keep it, he has to pay for it himself. So he has to reimburse, the government, the taxpayer, to keep that gift. He's kept a few gifts, it turns out. 2 of the gifts he's kept happened to be from the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. So the first gift that Trudeau kept from Premier Li Keqiang was a Chinese e-bike. It turns out he doesn't really keep a lot of gifts, which makes it kind of weird that he decided of all things to keep would be a Chinese e-bike. He must have really liked that e-bike. But he's got that in his garage somewhere at the Rideau cottage, chilling around, this fancy Chinese e-bike from Li Keqiang. Maybe the reason why Justin Trudeau kept that Chinese e-bike is because it's shiny enough that when he's riding it, he can look down and see his reflection. Even more interesting, in 2017, he kept a Huawei Mate 10 Pro Android phone. This was a gift from Li. The Chinese premier gave Justin Trudeau a Huawei cell phone. And it appears as though he kept the gift. So Trudeau, who actually banned Huawei a couple months ago, back in 2017, kept a gift of a Huawei smartphone. Why would Trudeau want to keep a Huawei Android smartphone? Very bizarre, but then again, very Trudeau of Justin Trudeau. Now, it wasn't just the legacy media that did real reporting. True North, through vigorous reporting, our endless pursuit of the truth, we have obtained exclusive images of these gifts, of these portraits from world leaders to Justin Trudeau. This first one was a gift from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Justin Trudeau. As you can see here, this is the photo that Narendra Modi handed Justin Trudeau, the portrait of himself. Really, this is Justin Trudeau in his younger days, really, displaying what India-Canada relations means to Trudeau. So great. There's a great photo there. Again, don't ask us how we obtain these photos. Those are the tricks to the trade. Our investigative journalists will keep the secrets locked up tight. The second gift was given to Justin Trudeau on his most recent trip to Rwanda. This is from Rwandan President Paul Kagame. And again, we obtained this through our vigorous search for truth. This is the portrait Rwandan President Paul Kagame gave to Justin Trudeau on his latest visit. Again, a younger Justin Trudeau, really symbolizing the bond, the growing bond that exists between Justin Trudeau and the people of Rwanda. So there it is, guys. Great stuff from the True North team on that reporting. So because it's a Canadian Press article and the legacy media published this on all their different social media feeds, we wanted to go through and pick some of the best comments from you guys on what you had to say about this ridiculous story. So we start off with this person. He should share them with Canadians in the form of murals throughout the country. Amazing. Just amazing. This person writes, but he's not narcissistic, so it's totally fine. Totally okay. Yes, of course. Justin Trudeau is definitely not a narcissist. And this person comments on the global story. Once again, very North Korea-esque. Yes, very North Korea-esque indeed, but we have seen that not only from the Prime Minister, but from the legacy media, if you recall, a few weeks ago on the program. And then this person also responds to the global story and writes, not really newsworthy, but believable. Anything that feeds JT's ego. You don't want to damage that very fragile ego of Justin Trudeau. What a shame that would be. So Monday was Emancipation Day for us all in Canada. That's why we had the long weekend. It's a new holiday for us, and it marks the ending of slavery in the British Empire back in 1834. CBC Television aired a segment of a group of black activists in Guelph, Ontario, holding a backyard book burning and artifact destroying party or celebration. And it was a very interesting television segment. They kind of glossed over the fact that this group was burning books openly in public, not having any issue with it at all. So you'll see in this following video that these activists are destroying and smashing figurines and other, sort of garden-related items that are obviously in poor taste and racist. And then they are also burning pictures of blackface performances in Guelph or in Ontario. And then near the end, they start showing them burning books, ripping pages out and burning books. Funny enough, the CBC doesn't spend much time showing us what books they're burning or why they're burning those books. And of course, there's no criticism at all of any of these book burnings. In fact, what they do is they find people at this event who say, actually, I wasn't really comfortable with burning books, but after watching it and learning and understanding why they're burning books, it's totally right for me, and I want to burn books too. You can't make it up. You got to watch this video. We'll come back to some of your responses after.
A Valentine's Day card, a cookie jar, children's books, statues.
This is blackface image stream, black minstrel. And to think that this image itself was someone in Guelph, and this happened in our city.
What links them all is the trauma they caused the black community.
It was really painful to take hold some of these imageries and think that these were how my ancestors are depicted.
Now at an afternoon celebration of Emancipation Day, between moments of song and poetry, a powerful moment of healing.
And I feel like it should be this photo because it needs to go. Let's get some cheers around.
The items were burned and smashed.
Even today.
That release felt by others in the crowd who threw their own pages into the fire.
Anybody else want to rip? Come on and rip.
It lets out anger and resentment. That's why I went up there.
The thought of it burning a book is difficult for me, but I would like to go quietly and burn some pages now, because the things that we were taught were so dreadful.
Work, they hope, will be energized
There's something about a fire in the release.
Somebody.
by moments like this one. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Guelph, Ontario.
It's all in the name of racial justice. Burning books in the name of racial justice is totally acceptable to the CBC. They couldn't find one person who thought to themselves, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is a bit of a bad look. This great release of just burning books. Who wants to come up here and rip a page with me? And that woman, Debbie, who rightfully began by saying, the thought of burning books is a little uncomfortable for me, as it should be. That's not really what we do here in Canada. We're not really known for book burning in this country. But then she said, actually, when I was here, I wanted to go quietly and burn some pages myself, burn some books myself. You know, I gotta say, I have a pretty low bar for the CBC when it comes to journalism, when it comes to being honest with Canadians. But I gotta say, they didn't even come close to the bar here. They couldn't find one person to say, hey, wait a minute, I think, book burning is probably not the best idea. Doing what we know the very worst regimes in the world have done to erase history is probably not the best way to advance racial justice. The worst part about this to me, besides the actual burning of books and the excusing of that as though it's some sort of acceptable form of activism these days, the worst part about this for me is that even if the CBC wanted to find an opposing voice to burning books, which they obviously didn't, but if they did, they wouldn't even have had to have gone very far. They could have gone to their own reporter, Daniel Schwartz, who in 2010 wrote a whole story criticizing regimes from around the world and from history that have burned books. So this story that Daniel Schwartz wrote back in 2010 chronicles 2,200 years of book burning from governments, from individuals, and from religious leaders. So again, in 2010, burning books was bad. Probably in 2019 and 2020, burning books was bad, but we're living in new times, guys. If the cause is right, if the activism is right, it doesn't matter what they do. If the cause is accepted by the majority of journalists in the CBC newsroom, if it fits their narrative, then it's not a problem. It's not this big, horrible issue that we all used to look at as the very worst actions of some of the very worst governments. You see, if it advances quote-unquote racial justice, burning books is totally fine. Erasing history is totally fine. But as soon as it ventures or veers into a territory that might not be accepted by leftists occupying the newsrooms of Canada, then all of a sudden, of course, there's a big issue. Well, thanks to John Kay over at Quillette, who posted this video to Twitter to give the audience, give you guys an opportunity to voice your thoughts about this, we found some of your responses and we want to highlight some of them here. So one comment we wanted to highlight from this tweet was from someone on the left, actually, who raises a really great point. This person writes, "This is really horrible. We on the left lose a major talking point when we condemn right-wing censorship of books, when we condone book burning." Of course, because when we see conservative governors in the United States advancing legislation that the left really dislikes, the left immediately starts talking about how the right are censoring us, the right are banning books in schools, all of that. So they're okay with using the book burning and censorship line against conservatives. But where is the CBC when they openly promote the burning of books in the name of racial justice? That's a great point from a leftist, something I don't often say, but when it is warranted, I will say it. This next comment is a bit more on point, and this person writes, "We don't use the phrase book burning when it's good people burning bad books." Exactly. Like I said, when it's the right people for the right cause, then all of a sudden it's activism. When it's the wrong people for the wrong cause, it's the very worst accusations of censorship. And finally, this person writes, "Just keeping toasty in August." It's exactly, actually, they're just trying to stay warm in that August sun. So a group of British climate activists have come up with a new strategy to save us all from the warming planet. Yes, the people that tell us the planet is going to end in a few years, that sort of never-ending, behind that never-ending corner, somewhere looms the dangerous boogeyman of climate change. So to save us all, what they are doing is they are slashing the tires of SUVs. So yes, if you're driving an SUV in British Columbia now, in Victoria, you better watch out. So this group called themselves the Tire Extinguishers. Very creative group. Only radical climate activists could come up with as creative a name as Tire Extinguishers for their little petty crimes group. They have landed in Canada and they are taking direct action, as they say, on Canadian SUVs. This group claimed responsibility for deflating 34 tires in Victoria, all in the name of climate change. So crimes committed in the name of climate change? No problem, of course. Book burning in the name of racial justice? No problem, of course. You see how this is all kind of shaping up? Anyway, this group called the Tire Extinguishers were very proud of their work. They wrote on Twitter, "Busy night last night. 34 SUVs disarmed in Victoria, British Columbia." Disarmed, like what? There's some sort of weapon? Oh, let me disarm this SUV only for the driver to go, pick up new tires, throw the dead rubber into the trash, put that rubber into the atmosphere, and keep driving my SUV. You guys are really, really rocking it on the climate change stuff. Nice work to these Brits. Debut action for the Tire Extinguishers of Victoria as they take action across the Ontario capital region. Interesting here. Something tells me that these Brits don't know their Canadian geography very well. The Tire Extinguishers of Victoria taking action across the Ontario capital region? Interesting. I don't think that really adds up, folks, but they did get the part right about them being in Victoria, British Columbia. And then they finish off their tweet by saying, actions now happening in both the east and west of Canada. Interesting stuff, to say the least. Now, here's where this story gets a little weird. So I'm not going to go out and say this is fake news right away, because it turns out the Victoria Police have responded to this. They are on to this story, and they're, I guess, running some sort of investigation. Probably nothing will happen, though, because they're climate activists. What's very interesting about this, however, is that the images the Tire Extinguishers of the UK have used in their stories happen to be of cars on the left-hand side of the road, which doesn't seem very Canadian, if you ask me, does it now? Interesting. This person is disarming a vehicle parked on the left side of the road. And then this next photo of a Mercedes-Benz also happens to be parked on the left side of the road. Did they wonder if any of us Canadians might catch this? Huh. Now, they're obviously not the smartest people in the world, but I don't think anyone is making that accusation about them at all. But of course, they got brutally ratioed on this show. It's not the ratio of the week, I will say. The Tire Extinguishers are not winners this week, although they certainly could be. But we did, however, get some hilarious comments on this tweet. I want to highlight some of them for you. This person writes, "I was considering an EV, but I think your argument has swayed me to get a GMC Yukon. Bigger the better." Couldn't agree more to that. Brilliant stuff. This person writes, "Had a huge flat deck tow truck come grab my heavy truck. He sat there idling for probably 30 minutes, loaded me up, drove me to my mechanic. Bought one new tire, filled up my other 3, and off I went. Congrats, you guys just polluted more than my truck does." You didn't think these tire extinguishers, these highly educated Oxford upper-class activists, were really thinking through the fact that they probably create more pollution, the fact that all they're doing is just putting more rubber into our garbage dumps, the fact that they're just causing tow trucks to drive to pick up these SUVs. It's not about helping the environment anymore or doing anything positive for the environment. It's all about the amount of virtue signaling points you can score by being a part of these movements. So we wrap up the show with the Ratio of the Week award, and this week it is going to the BC NDP, the governing party of British Columbia. Yes, they put out on Twitter earlier this week, and let me just start by saying they're clearly very proud people. And I don't think anyone would get that wrong about the NDP when looking at this tweet. So clearly they are very pro LGBT LMNOP. They're very proud people. You know, they've still got the Pride logo in their Twitter logo there. They've got the Pride flag in the background of this tweet, which reads BC NDP proud all year, just in case anyone was mistaken. So the tweet starts with them just confirming for all British Columbians and Canadians how proud they are for funding gender-affirming surgeries. Yes, for funding, promoting, and supporting gender-affirming surgeries. That's when people using your tax dollars undergo surgeries where they mutilate body parts of young children, all in the name of being inclusive to the trans community. Aren't you proud about that too? Clearly, the BC NDP government are very proud about that. They also say that also by bringing back the Human Rights Commission, the BC NDP team is making life in BC better and more inclusive, no matter who you are or who you love. And they write hashtag Van Pride, hashtag Together Again, hashtag Love is Love. How absolutely awful is that? By the time we're filming this, this tweet has over 260 comments and only 100 likes. Pretty bad comment to like ratio there. Worthy of the award, certainly worthy of the award. We're not handing out participation prizes on this show, although the BC NDP team probably does that. We're not handing out participation prizes. If you are worthy of the award and you are the rightful winner, you will win. And you certainly take home the award this week, BC NDP. We want to highlight some of your comments because unbelievably, and I really can't believe it, it turns out British Columbians and Canadians aren't best pleased about their taxpayer funds going to gender-affirming surgeries. Again, that's just mutilating body parts for people who are suffering from mental illnesses. Turns out not all of you are jazzed about this. We have some of your comments and want to read some of them on the show. This person writes, in the past, I have voted for the NDP because they represented the working class. The party that will stand up for workers will get my vote, not this pandering mob. Such a great point. And you'll find actually a lot of the comments under this tweet are from NDP voters, former NDP voters or current NDP voters. Certainly, they won't be voting for the NDP anymore. They're obviously done with this. And I think what we're seeing actually here, and it's worth raising, a shift in the narrative here. I don't think that the classic NDP voter, the person who's attracted to the NDP because they are the working class party, is along for the ride with this wild gender ideology stuff. The NDP, the Liberals, these left-wing parties are going to lose part of their base the further they go down this gender ideology rabbit hole. And I think that's obviously what's happening here. This person writes, I appreciate the reminder why the BC NDP is a dumpster fire of a political party. Yes, as if we needed the reminder, but certainly we'll take one when we get one. And this is certainly that. This person writes, chemical castration and genital mutilation of kids is still barbaric no matter how you phrase it. Again, this is just wild stuff. We've reached a point where the governing party of British Columbia is so comfortable with this that they're willing to put it out there on social media. And I hope that this backfires hard on the BC NDP. They certainly deserve it. That's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.